Guys, this is Smart Bomb from Western New York Airsoft League. This time I'm going to be reviewing a coverall in the San Marco variant of the Italian 1929 Telemimetico pattern that I've reviewed earlier. And the coverall here that I'm showing today is, as the name implies, in use by the San Marco, or was in use by the San Marco Battalion that is part of the Italian army. And San Marco, from what I understand, is somewhat of a ranger style unit, an elite light infantry unit. Not quite the same as special forces in the Green Beret mold, but still an elite unit, all the same. These days, they no longer wear this. This was probably phased out around the same time as the 1929 pattern. It might have been used a little bit longer, but they actually now have an almost multicam style uniform that is almost looks spray painted, and anybody who's familiar with that pattern knows that it precedes multicam by quite a few years. So that's something they've been using for a while, but this was something that they used to distinguish themselves. And it came, I know of it in at least two forms. The coverall that you see here and a two-piece. I've seen the tops in this pattern before on Western or Sportsman's Guide, excuse me, and they run about $30. I got this from Sportsman's Guide as well, and it was around $30. But I've never seen the pants for the two-piece, so I really can't talk anywhere about that. But the top that I've seen looks very similar to a typical BDU top. It's got a slightly different cut, but there's not a whole lot of changes to it. Whereas this obviously is quite a bit different. What I'm going to do here is, as I'm talking about the pattern, you can see the same basic three-color scheme, but I'm just going to put the regular 1929 pattern against it real quick, and you can see how much brighter the 1929 original pattern is in comparison to the San Marco. That being said, I know I've said this before in my reviews of Italian stuff, but this is an extremely comfortable uniform. It's the typical, I believe probably 100% cotton, maybe a 60-40 poly cotton blend, but likely 100% cotton. Non-ripstop, but again, the cut is fantastic. Basic features, again, very interesting. No Star Savoy here, as I've seen on some of the other Italian uniforms, but basic collar, standard epaulets. First thing that we have here is two chest pockets. They're interesting in that they're open top. They're closed by a single button eyelet fastener. You can see one of those loose threads that you always see on Italian uniforms for some reason. They're both identical. I imagine they're probably map pockets, something along those lines. They're large enough that you can fit a pretty much average sized hand in them. Interesting that they've got this European bevel to them that you rarely see in American style uniforms, but you see on European ones very frequently. Going down from there, you've got two identical. This one you'll just see the one side of it, but the thigh level cargo pockets, again, a fist fits very easily in them. They're very baggy, and the interesting thing about these is when the suit is on, they actually fall right at the wearer's the tip of their fingers, and actually maybe a little bit higher than that, but they're much easier to access than the cargo pockets you find on American M81 style uniforms and similar cuts, which I happen to like a lot. I think it's a nice change to the typical cut. Other than that, these coveralls are pretty basic. The only other real features are these elasticized cuffs, which, like I talked about in my 1929 pattern review, the 1929 regular pattern do not have those elasticized cuffs. At the top, the cuffs are not elasticized, which again is in reverse of the 1929 pattern, but they've got these button and eyelet closures again. It's two buttons, one the kind of open and then the closed button position. The front has a 6-button closure. This is interesting as opposed to the 1929 pattern in that the buttons are not exposed on the areas where there are buttons, and like I said in the 1929 review, these are different than the snaps that the 1929 pattern has. A little bit more conventional, but it goes pretty much from the neck to the waist area. Makes them very easy to get in and out of. Last feature is a drawstring system on the inside, and you can see a little bit of marking there, just for cinching up the waist if need be. These things are pretty snug to begin with, though, like most coveralls are. Not a whole lot else to say than that, though, but these are somewhat regularly available on Sportsman's Guide, and like I said, they run you about $30. As you can see, they usually come with a little bit of wear to them, but for a typical airsofter, that's really not going to be a whole lot of issue since you're going to be wearing them out on the game field anyway. But as a quasi-collector, it makes me feel a little bit better about getting them dirty, that they're already been used. But they show up every once in a while. Like I said, with Italian stuff, very comfortable, a little bit different of a pattern than anybody else on the field. I feel they'd probably be pretty effective, especially this variant, now that the colors are a little bit darker. But if you happen to see them around, they're definitely worth taking a look at if you want something different and something a little bit easier to get into and out of than regular old BDUs. Until next time, I think that's going to be it, and I'll see you guys then.